Hi everybody and welcome to my channel. My name is Debbie and I'm a mixed media artist, which means I get to play with everything you see in the art shop. I can buy it and play with it, and so can you. And my job and great pleasure is to show you how to use everything together. For today's project, we've got all sorts of stuff here. And it's going to be a jelly print. It's going to be a botanical jelly print, but not botanically correct. We don't need to, this is quite a nice, relaxed, chilled project. Let me just find it and show you. No, there we go. That's it. It is a rowan branch and it's got some berries and it's all done with a round jelly plate, which I've got here quite close to me. So yeah, we've used it. You'll see exactly what goes on in the video. It's not transfer method. I don't use that method. That's great if you like it, but I don't. I prefer to paint and use it for my artwork. So this is what we're doing today. Before we get into the main video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe and a comment if you've got the time. I love to see your opinions and get back to you if I possibly can. I get back to all of them. And do consider joining my Patreon if you like what you see here and you like my teaching method. That's what my Patreon's all about. It's basically an art school. And for $10 a month, give or take, depending on which currency you're working in, you get 3 videos a week for that. And it's the best value I can possibly make it. And it's thanks to my lovely Patreons that I get to make all of this nice stuff for you as well. Thank you so much. I don't thank them enough for that. And I love their company too. We've got a really nice group over there, actually. It's just perfect. Right, let's get on with this then, shall we? Right, so the first thing to do is to get yourself some sort of a sketch, which I've made here just very quickly on a piece of printer paper just to save some time. Now, what I've done, because I want it to print the right way, as in right here, quotation air quotes there, because I prefer things angled one way to the other. Now, if you're the same, then orientation is really quite important to make sure that everything is facing the correct way to get the sun or whatever light there is. Because this is a natural product and it's actually, it's a sprig of something you might find on a tree, we're going to assume that the natural light comes from the sun, and therefore from above. I tend to bring it in slightly from the left hand side. So for me, if this was turned up the other way, and I realize you can't see it very well at all, if it was here, this feels more natural to collect the most light and to make a bit of a feature of the berries. So that's sort of where I am with mine, but you absolutely do not have to do that. It is simply a guideline. But what I've done is I've drawn myself a picture. First of all, I took my jelly plate and I sketched around it, and then I drew this. Now, as you just saw, the jelly plate's fairly new, so it's quite sort of see-through. I could just paint like that. But when I print, it's going to print backwards, as in the berries are going to be this way. Like I said, I know you can't see them very well. So what I need to do is to print, because I could just paint on here and then go for it. And if you're not bothered about the way that everything is aligned, then that is the way to do it. And I've got actually got a tutorial on my Patreon about how to turn a print or to use that method. But I want to show you this other way, which is a lot easier. What you need to do is you need to draw onto your piece of paper. Just draw an image to print. I'm just going over a few of them because I did this on purpose so you could see what I wanted to do, but I wanted to be able to come back in and add this line work. Now, what I'm doing is I'm using a 12B pencil. A 10B also works very well. The main thing is it's got to be a B. It's got to be soft. And what you're going to do is you're going to put some graphite onto the paper and load it up like that, and then we're going to use our barons to transfer the print without doing anything else. Now, I'm doing this a little bit darker because I'm hoping that everybody can see what I'm doing. But if you're at home and you can see it perfectly well with just a sketch, which to be fair, when I just laid it on there, it printed enough for me to be able to see. It's up to you. Right, so we've got to that bit. Next thing, now I've got this mounted on a stamp sort of platform to use for stamps for my cards, but it works really well with this as well. It's got plenty to hang on to. You can turn it easily because of the sticky nature of the jelly plate. It won't come off, and you can then use it to manipulate and do what you need to do. There's a bit of a double-edged sword here, because when you put it down and it's got some paint on it to print, I tend to find I prefer to remove it and then remove the jelly plate separately. I just feel it's too clunky. I'll show you that bit when we get to it. Right, so what we do is we decide how we want the print to be. Obviously, that just doesn't feel right. However, if you're looking at a tree, you're going to see some that are hanging down, especially after the rain. But I'm going to assume that this is how we're going to do the print. So I'm going to put this on here and line it up. I'm actually going to do it this way because I want to line it up as well as I possibly can, like that. Then I'm going to put this back down onto here and make sure that it's in the right place. A little square one would have been much better. And then I'm going to get my barons, which is this strange looking thing. If you haven't got one of these, a spoon will do, as long as it's smooth and doesn't have any bits on it that can tear either the paper or the plate. So then you just go over it like so. You don't really even have to do this. You can do it with your hand, but if you've got one of these, this is a nice time to use it, since we've probably gone out and bought one. Okay, so when you've done that, you can remove this and you will have a print on the plate that you can use. Now, when you print, it will flip the image. So it won't flip it this way, it flips it on the horizontal plane, so this way. So it'll be mirror image, which is what I want, because that means that when it does do that, sorry, I'm just trying not to bang the camera there or have glare from the studio lights, but it will print this way. So that's what we're sort of after. Right, so you can reuse this, so don't get rid of your line drawings, especially if you've taken the trouble to sort of do them. It's a good idea to keep them. Now, I'm going to be using a filbert brush. It's a number 4. It's a bit of a long handle, which I'll probably bang the camera with, but I shall do my best, or else I'll cut it down. I like this because it's a flat brush, but it's got a rounded edge, which means it gives a nice soft result, and you can get into all these rounded shapes without any problems whatsoever. And we're going to use acrylic gouache paint. Now, this is Turner. You can use any brand, but make sure it's acrylic gouache and not traditional gouache. The traditional gouache is the one that you can re-wet, so you don't want that one. I've tried and experimented with it, and I don't love it. This is the best one to go with. So what we need to do is we're going to put the green aside for now, and I'm going to do it this way because I know probably best to put it out. If it bothers you, put some paint out. Now, like I said in the introduction, this is not a transfer method. This is painting directly onto your plate. And I'm just picking some random berries to use some raw sienna on. And trying to get the lid back on right now. That's obviously beyond me. Then I'm going to add in some Venetian red, if it will give me some colour there and not just the binder. Like I said, I'm quite aware this is not how to do it, but when I only want a small amount, quite often I do it like this. And probably so does everybody else, to be fair. Right, so just again, make some random with the Venetian red, and then I'm going to come back with Chinese red. I'm not washing my brush in between. I'm just wiping it off on a piece of kitchen wrap there, because it doesn't matter if the colours mix in a little bit. And then a bit of Chinese red. Now, it doesn't matter if the two reds are close together. What matters is that we close some of those gaps and just colour all of the berries. Now the leaves, they're a bit well, not difficult. I know this was a different red, but I'm just going to close up some of the spaces. The leaves are not difficult, they're just different. I'm going to make mine green, and I'm using a green called mustard, which to me would have been a yellow, but Turner in their wisdom have made it. Mustard is a greeny colour, and it certainly is a greeny colour. It's certainly not what you would expect to find as a mustard. Now, quite often with these rowan berries and rowan trees, you can get a little bit of the red onto the leaves as well. I'm going to keep this simple for you today and just paint them green and show you a way that we can get some colour into the leaves if you want to after printing. Now, the trick here is to put enough paint on, because everything you put onto the plate will print in some form or another. You may not want it to. For example, if you've got holes, we're going to go over the top of this with pan pastel to make a background. And if you've got holes, the pan pastel will colour your leaves in whatever colour pan pastel you have chosen, because there are gaps and the pan pastel will fill them up. I'll show you when we get there. Just sort of could have used a slightly smaller crowbar for this job, but it's really nice sometimes when you don't have a pattern with 30 different brushes. Okay. I don't mind these holes in the leaves a little bit, as in the streaks where you can actually see the plate bit underneath them. But if that bothers you, wait till this dries and add another coat. You can add the paint a lot thicker than that if you want to. I don't. I want to keep it nice and light. Like I said, this is going to be a mixed media project. So we're not just using paint. We will be using all sorts of other things. I've got coloured pencils standing by here. I have some pan pastel and I have some ink. So if you don't have ink, this is a brown ink. Just while I've got to wait for that to dry now. Antique ink by Raw and Klingner. Any brown ink will do. This is just the one that I have here. I live in Germany, so this is the one that I can buy easiest. You can also use this is for the stems basically, and also little ends in the berries. You can also use any of these felt tip type ones. This one I think is burgundy. It's not a good example, but it's the type of pen, not the colour ink, that is relevant. So any of these sorts of pens, you can use a brush and some acrylic ink to do the stems. I used to do that. I don't anymore because it is damn hard to control and so much easier and therefore a bit more fun with some sort of pen. And my favourite pen is a dip pen, which is this one here. It's a fine one. It's probably a mapping pen. I'm not a dip pen expert. I'm basically a jack of all trades because I'm a mixed media artist, so I know it's a pen, but if you are an actual dip pen expert, please correct me if you think that might be a mapping pen, which it may well be. Doesn't matter. It actually, we don't need to get that technical for this project. We just need a fairly fine nib, that's all, because we're going to draw these little marks and create a stem that holds the whole thing together. So this has got to dry completely, and when it does, I shall come back to you and show you what to do next. Okay, we're pretty dry here now. Now, what I was telling you before, and I can show you now that it's not going to get smudged too easily. As you can see here, there are lots of areas you can see straight through. I haven't made a completely opaque paint layer. You don't have to, because I like texture. I've left it like that. But if you want a completely opaque paint layer, try saying that 3 times quickly, you can put on another layer of paint. Because what's going to happen, if you turn that over and your jelly plate is quite new or clean, you can see exactly what you're going to get. You are going to get these little holes in the colour. And when we put the pan pastel on, it's going to fill them all from the back. Now, basically, we've got 2 products here. We've got Liquitex Matte Medium and we've got pan pastel. Now, Liquitex Matte Medium is acrylic paint without the pigment. Simply put, it's not that simple, and if a chemist who worked in a paint place was listening, he'd probably be cringing, he or she. But it is basically the binders and all the other magic stuff that goes into making your acrylic paint, except it's got no colour in it. This is the colour. This is basically going to turn into a sort of an acrylic layer with the Liquitex matte medium and the pan pastel together. You'll get a colour layer, but it's, yeah, and it's going to be like acrylic. So when I put this on in a second, it will fill in the background and it will fill in all of these little lines with this colour. So if you want these to be red, 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 or green, 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 and nothing else, then you can put another layer of paint on. I don't, and I'm not going to, because I'd like to show you what I do. Otherwise, there's no point if I say, well, you can do this, but I'm not going to. I'm going to do this. That's unhelpful. So we're going to leave it like this, and I'm going to show you it's extremely easy. You need some sort of an applicator. I use these cheap ones, and I always have done. I wash them out and use them for years. This one's been washed out just recently, actually. Mauve is a colour that stains. Right, I just pounce this on, but I make sure I give it a good layer because this is the colour the background's going to be. You can do a couple of different colours, or you can just leave it and be quite sort of, keep it simple. Now, with mixed media, normally you can do lots and lots of layers of different sorts with everything you own. But today it might be a little different, since what we are doing, like I said, give it a decent lot. And let's see what we can see from the other side. I will pick up that thread of the conversation in a second. That's what you're going to get for your money. You're going to get a beige background with those berries, but we've got more to do to the berries and things like that yet, so we're okay. Yeah, when you do this normally and so forth, as in not printing, and you use all your mixed media things onto your paper, you can go over with coloured pencils, you can use neo colours, you can use pastels, you can use gel pens, you can use all sorts of things, too many to mention. This is different. What you've done now is on the paper, you've created an acrylic layer with this. So some things that you would normally use won't go over it very well. Like, for example, I'm loving Holbein pencils more and more. I didn't before, but I am now. But some of them won't go over the acrylic mediums. They just don't like it. And that's where you have to know your products. You know what you use. And if you do a lot of jelly printing, you'll know which things that you can use. So I've got a few different bits and pieces here. For example, there are a couple here. These are a wild card, these two, because I've only just bought them. That's the first sharpen they've had. These are Holbeins. I don't know if they're going to work as well or not. The apricot, I doubt it will. However, I know the burgundy one will because I've done it before. So using your things and playing in your sketchbooks means you get to know what you've got, and you think sometimes, I really want a burgundy colour. I can't use the Holbein one. It doesn't work. I'll use polychrome or Caran d'Ache luminance or DLF, whatever. I'll use something else. DLF being Derwent Lightfast. Derwent Lightfast Forest. I know I can rely on that most of the time for the leaves. It's the best one I've got. Same with Green Ochre, Caran d'Ache Luminance, Green Ochre. This one's quite a good one. I don't think I'll be using it very much because it's very similar to the colour of the paint, so it may not be needed. And this is Raisin. I just got this out because I liked it and I'd love to use it. But yeah, you've got to, it's the same with the ink. I'm using a pigment ink. Some drawing inks and other ones that are very light and thin won't necessarily like this to go over this. So you have to have a play. Right, the next thing we have to do is we get prepared for the next bit, because you've got to work quite quickly. And so we put everything here, ready to print. Now with this is the Liquitex matte medium. Don't get the gloss medium, get the matte medium, and you need a small brayer. This one cost me about €1.75, and it's small, but it's mighty perfect. I don't use any of my other brayers anymore for this technique, only this little one. You'll need a couple of drops, probably if they're small, right? If they're that big, so about the size of a half a pea, you've got enough. And then you move it around the plate. Don't overwork it. And If the colours start to move for any reason, and with some media they can, then stop. So what you're trying to do is achieve a lovely coverage like that. I don't know if you can see that, but you can see there's no globs. And then, like I said, using these lovely wings to centre it as well as possible and press down. And you can see everything you're doing. It's brilliant. So leave it now to dry and put the brayer, sorry about my arm there, I put my brayer straight into the water and just move it backwards and forwards on the bottom of the pot. This is just a cheap, it's a salsa jar that I've reused. And it's good because it's nice and wide and I can't tip it over. And trust me, I'll find a way. The only thing is I haven't yet found a way, but I will. Right, I think we can get rid of that. So that's got to stay and dry. If you want to make a ghost print, so you can sometimes get, I've had 3 ghost prints from one pull. It's normally a mono print, one, but you can make a ghost print and get several and then do them in different ways. And again, you find all of that information in my Patreon and on my Instagram as well. Have a look on there because I put stuff there as well. If you only want the one print, let it dry. If you want a ghost print, get it off as quickly as you possibly can, and then you might get a couple of others. I don't do that anymore. I used to, because I was fascinated thinking, well, there's no point printing something if I can only get one. I may as well just paint it. That was when I started. And that's an often asked question, actually, which is worth addressing. No, the reason we print this with the jelly plate, with my technique, and as far as I know, this is my technique. I've certainly been developing it for a long time. Then you get texture. You get amazing texture, and you can't easily replicate that with your brush. That's why I print. If you wanted to paint, of course you can paint these. Before jelly printing was even thought of, people were looking at berries on trees and saying, gee, I'd like to paint that, and off they went and painted it. But if you want the textures that you can get, you have to print. So I'm going to take this off now. I'm just breaking the seal without taking it off the paper. You can see there the seal sort of traveling across the plate. Just get rid of that and put it aside, because I do prefer to do this like this without anything. The other thing you can also do, easier if you're not working in a sketchbook, is bring your barons back in and make sure you get a very good seal by going over with that. I don't always do this. It's not always necessary, but if you want to, you can. But like I said, working in a sketchbook is a bit difficult because of the thickness of everything. Put that back down. But as long as it's dry, we'll get something. There we go. There was something on the plate there. So we've got a hole in our leaf. We will make that part of the design. As you can see, it leaves an excellent and unusual back. Is that better? I'm not quite sure. It's like frosted glass now. I could go in there and sketch that again, put more paint on it and print it again. If I don't want to, then I wash it, or rather clean it with baby oil, just regular baby oil that you would use on a baby. Best thing for doing this. And then I store it in paper like so. Right, you don't need that anymore. What we need this to be is very, very dry. Now, speaking of the texture, I'm not sure if you can see the textures that we've got in the background there. We can bring a few of those up later on, but it's also lovely and you can feel that it's textural. So that's why we print, because like I said, anyone can go off and paint something. There's literally nobody policing it. But if you want the texture, it's a little bit different. Right, we can also see those streaks we spoke about before on the berries. We can now fill some of those in, but before we do, we're going to make sure this is super, super dry. Here again with mixed media, a lot of people say, look, I've done everything you said. I bought all the things that you bought. I looked at them and compared them. They're identical, same serial number and everything. And it doesn't work for me. Why does it work for you and not for me? Number one reason is the paint layer, the first layer, isn't dry. If it's not dry, the pencils won't work on it. It's as simple as that. So let it dry either naturally, or you can dry it with a hairdryer or a heat tool, but let it dry and then come back to it and we will do some details. Okay. Whenever I do something like this, I tend to do the leaves first. Now, as you can see, we've got some streaks there on the leaves. We don't want a lot of streak, but the idea is to get these leaves with a little bit of random colour, and then we can finish off the details with ink afterwards. So I've got my forest pencil and I'm using it on its side, just putting some different colours on. Now, because of the textures, and I'm going to make the most of this little hole here by making it into a bit of bug damage. And what I will do there is, because now I have a hole behind it, getting a colour that's very similar. This one's beige, it's a Holbein beige. And I'm just going to fill that little bit in. And of course, just to make sure, I will use it elsewhere. I would never repair a hole unless I had exactly the same product and then just leave it. But by putting this elsewhere, not only am I bringing out some of that lovely texture, I'm just going to sharpen it a small amount because I would like to have more lead exposed so I can use it on its side. When I do this, I'm getting some of that beautiful texture out. And I'm learning that beige over this goes quite well. I can use that in a future incantation of a print like this. And I can also see that even though some of the Holbein pencils don't love acrylic, this one doesn't mind it. All of this is very subtle. It's supposed to be subtle. We're not going for black and white. So we've got this raw sienna, a burnt sienna tint, sorry about that, burnt sienna tint and a beige. They're similar. And because they're similar, they marry together beautifully and they don't sort of argue. Whereas if you put that and maybe this, you'd have a lot of different sort of colours there. And it takes it away from the main event. So let's go back with the forest pencil and just pop some random colours onto the leaves. You've got lots of texture there. You can also use the warmth of your finger, which will blur it off. It'll come off the leaves if you do that, but I'm quite happy to accept a little bit of that because that adds to the texture as well, and it blurs it on the leaves, makes it a little bit more, it's a little softer. I don't want to use too much of the forest because it's the darkest colour. Oh, and if you haven't got a dip pen or any felt tips and you just can't bear the thought of using a brush, you can also sharpen your pencil up and use it on here. This Derwent Light Fast pencil is really useful because it will go over the acrylic quite well. I've made a late minute change to the ink as well. I was going to use a dark brown. I've decided to use my Caput Mortuum instead. So last minute fill in there. It will come to that in a minute. So anyway, I've put some colour on here. Let's see how this one goes. I don't think you're going to see much, but I don't mind it. This is the Caran d'Ache Luminance in green ochre. I'm just putting some of that over there because what this is doing is smoothing the leaves out just slightly while still leaving some sort of veininess there. And it's colouring in a few of the gaps, which it makes it look a little bit smoother. And also when you go over a darker colour like the forest with a lighter colour like green ochre, it'll burnish the forest. The lighter colour will burnish the dark and soften it a lot. So that sort of gives us a little bit of interest. Now, I did mention before that sometimes these leaves have some colour on them, and I've chosen a couple here. I've chosen a Tombow number 026 and I've chosen a Lyra Vermilion. I don't know what 026 is, but it's a sort of a light yellowy green, and I'm going to go on with that. Oops, drop the marker. That would be really good. Nice and difficult to fix too. And I'm just further on filling some of these holes in. With these streaks, if I had have had a bit more room and a larger leaf, I could have made the streaks in the paint go as in the direction of veins, and that would have really made a good job of that, actually. Something to note for another time when I've got more leaf real estate to play with. These are quite small. Okay, so I'm just going over the whole lot. And you can also touch it with the vermilion here, which is quite nice on the ends sometimes, and very carefully swipe it towards the leaf while still wet, because then you'll get that little bit of colour without going over the lines, because the idea is you're meant to stay with the leaf. If you do go over the lines and get some sort of smudging, like I have a little bit here with the green, you've got a couple of choices. You can either put up with it and leave it there. You can get busy with your electric or battery operated eraser and get rid of it. Or you can make it a part of a feature and do it everywhere. You don't make a feature out of it. Right. Okay. Little bit of colour on the leaves. It's just a small amount, but it works really well. We'll keep these because they might be useful for the petals as well. Berries. I mean berries. Just checking to see if you're all still awake there. Right, I've got a couple of choices here. None of them, this one doesn't like it at all, but I need to get some colour on the berries, and I'll show you there's a couple of ways we can do that too. So this is it's a Derwent Light Fast in Scarlet. It's not going to colour the berries the way I want to, but it's one way of doing them. You can then come back with your Lyras and just fill in the colour. Also make them round. I have a video about the stages and different sort of layers for mixed media paper. Mixed media art. Sorry, if I stop doing that and concentrate, then I won't sound like an idiot. Well, not quite as much. When we do mixed media artwork, we do it in layers. The first layer in this case was the jelly print. That's our preparatory layer. And that's where we do big shapes and get everything where it's supposed to be and roughly in proportion to each other. Then we come back in with the second layer, which is the refining layer. And that's what we're doing right now. We're refining these. These berries are not supposed to be furry. They're supposed to be shiny, round and hard looking. So we're working on that right now. And then we'll come back in with the detail layer, which is basically ink plus anything that needs touching up. So what I'm doing with this vermilion one is I'm colouring in to close some of those streaky marks because they're not ideal in this situation. But if you just fill them in with this colour, it'll work perfectly well. And into the back there. Now I've got a couple of different coloured berries. I've got a couple of different markers. Let's see how this one goes on here. Yeah, that could work. This is another good way of tying your picture together, is by using the same colour here as I've used on the leaves, because there are still some ripening berries there. It's not opaque. You can use acrylic markers and all sorts of things if you want to really fill in that colour. I don't particularly. I'm quite happy with it like this. Now it's got to dry and we'll do some dark work. Let's see what's going to work here. This one's a polychromos in Caput Mortuum. I love Caput Mortuum, and this could work. So I'm using little round strokes to get some nice even colour onto the berries on the side away from the light. Now remember, the light's coming this way, so see that bright red bit? Leave it. This is where the shade is, because we want these berries to be round. Like I said, this is my way of doing jelly printing. You may have another way, or you may have seen another way. I've just never been happy just creating billions of jelly papers. I'm going to change to Holbein Burgundy because I just want to see how it goes on this. I've never done this before. We're learning this bit together. Yep, it doesn't like it at all. So it's going to be back to this good old Caput Mortuum. Normally the burgundy's pretty good. Today it's decided to show me up. Yeah, I'm not in. When I first got my jelly plate, I put it in a drawer for 6 years. I used it once, and I created a pile of textured paper, which was great. I used it for my card making, and then I got rid of everything I did by making cards with it because I had this pile of papers. They were lovely, but I thought, well, there must be more to it than this. But of course, at the time, no, just it didn't click for me. So I popped it in a drawer, and it stayed there for 8 years. I kid you not. We moved house and I put it back into the same drawer in the new house because it had been happy there for some time. And then a couple of months ago, I was going through the drawers and I pulled it out. I found it and I thought, right, either learn to like these things that you've spent money on or get rid and give them to somebody who does. So I had a play with it and I thought, well, I wonder what happens if I do this. I wonder what happens if I do that. And it worked really well with this method. And I thought, okay, all of a sudden I don't hate this. I can actually create artwork rather than what I saw at the time as craft. I was aware there was a transfer method and I saw people using magazines and printed paper. It wasn't for me. And this is the thing about art. Never let anybody say that what you're doing is wrong. It might just be a different journey. And that's how it has to be. They do it one way, you get to do it another way. And that's really what it's all about. So I wanted to do more artistic things. I wanted to do scenery and all sorts of things. And I've done all that. And I've written the tutorials for it. But it's a lot of fun, and actually I then went out after discovering it and bought a jelly plate in every size I could find and shape. Hence is why we're using a round one today, because I've got a round one. But, you know, that's the story of my journey. Right, so just finishing off these last couple here. That's not very round, is it? Come out a little bit if you have to, and just correct the shape. So that's that colour, and I'm guessing that the forest will be a pretty good match for this other colour. It's a little bit dark, isn't it? Tiny bit dark and a bit hard to control. See, what you can do there is exactly what you did on the leaves. Put down some colour and then come back in and burnish it with the green ochre pencil. Seeing what it looks like on its own. I think because I've started, I'm going to have to stick with it. So I'll just add some more forest there. Merest hint. So you little tiny circular strokes like this, but very, very small and quite light. And then same strokes over the top with the green ochre. Whatever you do, try not to get an outline. I'm going to, because we don't want that. It's all got to be softly blended. And here, see, that's quite messy. So you can use the pencil and then you decide which one of those is going to be in front. So there's an outline. We don't want that. So we now come in and blend it softly, but allow this to remain. And burnish with the green ochre. Around here and come in a little way, and then we blend it all in with this one. The tombos are great and the lyras also, but they can't perform the sorts of miracles sometimes that I need. See, for example, this is the apricot one by Holbein. It does nothing. It doesn't like the acrylic underneath there and the matte medium, which is another layer of acrylic. But I put it out because, again, like I said, I wanted to show you that sometimes you get nothing. Go over it. It won't do much at all. I made a little mark there. Oh no, I've got some on my finger. That's fine. What we do in that situation is you wash your hands, because it means some of the blending and burnishing. The first thing I try is my battery operated eraser, because that gets rid of most things. If it doesn't, you can use a bit of water, because I know what it is. It's the Tombow and Lyra from blending on the leaves, and I forgot, there it is on my fingers. Get it off your fingers. It's not good to leave it on there either, but also you can make a mess with it, and if invited, I certainly will make a mess with it. So, yeah, get rid of that and get it out of the way. Right, next we need to highlight our berries, and that's got to, we need to be able to put a bit of shine on them, and then we'll finish with our ink. There are a few ways we can get a highlight onto a berry. Number one, you can use a pencil. Well, we've proven that that didn't work, so this brand isn't going to work. So you can try another brand. This is my Chinese White by Derwent Drawing, which I love. And again, we're using circular strokes. Rule of thumb is when you're working on something that's round, use round strokes. Sometimes you can't. You've got to sort of get in and around, but try to keep that little glow round. Okay, you see there is just a little bit of a highlight there that's appearing, and you'll also notice that I'm only doing it on one side where the light is hitting it. This method ends up looking very organic and vintage. Now, with white, be careful, don't go too far all over the red. Make sure that you can still see, or the green for that matter, but the red is important because we don't want to make all the berries pink. We only want to put a little bit of highlight up there. You'll also notice that there's a bit of red here that's gone sort of AWOL. I'm not going to worry about it. I've decided that's something that I don't need to worry about. If I did need to worry about, I could add another little berry in there to close that gap up, or whatever, but I'm in my sketchbook and it happens. That's why I'm not editing it out either and sort of fixing it and coming back on, putting some music over it or whatever. That happened and I'm going to be all right with it eventually. The other thing you can do, and I'm using a Neo Art, too many Neos, Neo Color 2. This is the water soluble one. This is the pastel set from the Caran d'Ache 50th anniversary. However, this one's in open stock, so it's nothing to get excited about. However, there's a couple of things here. I did say there was more than one way to highlight. The other way is you can use something like a wax pastel. As you can see, it also makes a nice glowy highlight. And on the green, this one's a nice one. This one's pale yellow. So I don't think no, that's not. So that's available too. And I would choose that instead of the apricot for the green. So you can see. Now, the only thing against this, because it's very nice, it worked especially well on this one, that is otherwise determined not to behave. It's very nice, but it's very waxy, and I'm not going to wet it out and dissolve it. When you dissolve these in water, they do change their properties just a little bit, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to give them a swipe with my finger because that helps a bit too. But you may have trouble with that when you come to put the ink on top. I prefer this, even though it's more subtle. Right, so that's highlights out the way. I would suggest that if you've got only one option, find a white pencil that works. She says quickly, hoping that everybody realizes it's easy. Right, wrong thing. I'm after a dip pen. This is what I'm after. Okay, the next thing is some ink. I'm just giving it a bit of a shake, which will unfortunately result in an awful lot of froth, which I've got to get through. I know I can get these out, and I know there are special things available, but they're not cheap here, and I prefer to use my money for more art materials. Right, so what I'm doing is, normally I'd go the other way, but on this occasion, so that I don't have to turn it upside down too much, just putting these details in with ink. There's a couple of reasons for it. Number one, it's lovely and neat. Number two, it is a really nice contrast to all the texture that's on this. Because we've got texture on the background, we've got texture on the leaves, we've got texture on the berries. So to not have any texture on the branches at all and have it so small that you can't put any there is a nice contrast. And then down here we've put some coloured pencil. It's fine. We're going to ignore that and we're going to go right to the middle of each leaf and give it a flick. because then we get our centre veins. And it's all very antique print, this sort of thing. It's not supposed to look natural as in realistic. It's just supposed to be believable. Sorry to make you feel seasick there, but come up here and flick. Flick about 2/3 of the way down. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some pairs of veins in each one. To finish this bit. Yeah, the Caput Mortuum ink was good. If you've not got that, a dark brown works also very well. Don't cram the veins in. If you've not got a very big leaf, make one pair less. Sometimes because of the waxes, I'm not sure if you can see on my nib there's a little bulge of stuff which it's picked up off the leaves, all those pencils and other bits and pieces. So just clean the nib from time to time, but if it stops working, that will be why. And on these, I tend to work in this direction because I want the veins to gradually fade out towards the edge of the leaf, and it's just easier for me. If you have another way you prefer, that's your way. Now up here we had some damage on this leaf. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just outline it, and you can outline the whole leaf if you want to, and make a thing of all of the bits. So for example, here we can just create, I don't outline in one solid line, but I do just sort of make breaks here and there. And then you can use any sort of irregularity on the leaf. You can make a bug hole out of it. It takes seconds to do. If you've not got a dip pen, get one if you can. They're not very expensive. As a rule, they're probably one of our better art supplies. And they're very worth it. They're easy to use and they can make beautifully fine marks. But above all, you get to choose which colour you want to do things with. If you use a felt tip pen, number one, some of these surfaces can ruin it and will do so without any conscience at all. But also you have to take the colour they're giving you. And I don't necessarily want to do that. I wanted this to be Caput Mortuum, and I've used Caput Mortuum on the berries. I'm going to do one final flourish here by putting a little cross sort of thing on the berries here. And you can see I'm being quite careful by my standards not to get my hands in it. This is the end of it. Like so. That's all you need to do. And as you can see, just let's give that a wash. As you can see, you get a passable print of a piece of rowan, and it's quite nice. It's extremely easy, and it's a great way to use the jelly plate. Now I have, I'm putting up probably somewhere here in the top corner, one would hope, if I've done it right, the link to my other video in this series, which is on YouTube, which is a seascape, also using much the same methods, slightly different materials each time. That's mixed media for you, but same methods so that you can actually see what I'm talking about. And over on my Patreon, I've got an awful lot of these happening now, and lots of buildings, little towns, beach huts, the works, and I'm adding to them all the time. By the time this goes out, there'll be a lemon print as well, so very sort of Sicilian, Italian lemon type print with all those lovely sunny colours before we dive into autumn. Right, well, I do hope you have enjoyed this. I've certainly enjoyed presenting it to you. It's a really nice way to use a jelly plate, and it means that you can push the possibilities of what you're using it for into the art world, and not so like I said, I really don't want to disparage anybody's journey. Some people love making those papers, and that's fabulous. Whatever brings a smile to your heart is worth doing. But I just couldn't make it work for me. Wasn't a glimmer of a smile, nothing. I just thought, well, I'm glad I make cards, because like I said, I used them all for backgrounds for cards. I didn't do it well. I used too much paint. It was sort of just feeling my way, and I didn't give myself the time to sit down and do it properly. So like I said, last September, I think it was last September, about September 2024, I went through and found all those things that I don't like, and the jelly plate came out. But this is what I'm doing with it now. And do let me know in the comments what you think, and if you think this is a good use for it, or is it still sort of a this is going to get donated type item, because we can't love everything. It's as simple as that. We cannot love everything. We're going to see something that someone else is using, and we're going to buy it probably just once, one sort of size of it or shape, and we're still not going to like it. That's me in graphite. I don't like them. And I've tried and tried. I don't go with them. But we've got to try most things. You never know otherwise. So we've tried this, and this is the way I like to print these. I love the antique feel of it. And I'm also planning to do a major project, a bigger project with, don't want to frighten everybody away, with my Patreons, where I want to do a series of wildflower prints and then show them how to make it into a little zine with a cover. So that is coming in probably sometime near the end of August, I think. And it'll be about August when you're seeing this, so won't be long, is what I've got to say. Right, having said all that, let us sign off for the day. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe and a comment if you have the time. I do try to get back to all of them. And join my Patreon if you've got the time, because there's so much there to learn. It functions as an art school, and it's all taught in English, so you'll learn all of these techniques and more. I shall see you there. Bye for now. Bye.